Hello, everyone. I am Chad Pitts. I'm the Executive Director of the Iowa Golf Association. And before we get into the rules, I'm going to be upfront and honest and tell you guys we cheated a little bit this year. Because this is not a rules change year, and in fact, it's not even a year where they update clarifications or decisions, we went ahead and we're going to use the same webinar we recorded last year for this, just with the new intro, which I'm doing for you right now. This webinar will last about an hour. We get into a lot of different topics. They're going to be taught mainly by Carly Kerrigan, our Director of Competitions, and Nate McCoy, our Director of Handicapping and Course Rating, and you will hear from them momentarily. But before I do hand it over to them, I do want to tell you guys a little bit about us here at the Iowa Golf Association. We are located on the south side of Des Moines. We service the entire state of Iowa. We take that job very seriously, and part of that is to become experts on the rules of golf. In fact, as I record this, we as a staff just got back from an entire 4-day rules of golf workshop ourselves, where we're the students and not the teachers. It's important to learn and stay up to date on the rules. They're very intricate and can be confusing and intimidating, but we're going to hopefully make them a little more understandable for you after you watch this webinar. Golf's different than a lot of other sports. It's played outside. The playing fields, if you will, for this game are always different on every single golf course. If you play basketball or volleyball, the dimensions of the court are the same. The lines are always in the same place. But golf is not like that. We have courses that are literally growing while you're playing, and certainly growing in between rounds of golf. So constant change means the rules have to account for that. Become a little more difficult to apply at times because, unlike basketball or football or volleyball, if you're a referee, you rarely actually get to see the rules infraction. Much of what we do is trying to figure out what actually happened out there, and once we know the facts, then the ruling becomes quite easy, typically. The hard part is identifying or figuring out what the facts actually are. So again, different than a lot of other sports where the referees are right there and see all of the action. It's extremely difficult to see all of the action in a round of golf. So with that, it is my pleasure to hand it over to Carly Kerrigan and Nate McCoy as they take you through some rules. Thank you.
All right, and then Chad, next slide. Perfect. So this presentation, we will go over the 5 areas of the course: the teeing area, stroke and distance, out of bounds, provisional ball, dropping, penalty areas, bunkers, abnormal course conditions such as embedded ball, and then putting greens, unplayable balls, and then playing 2 balls. I'll be going through the first few topics with you guys, and then I'll pass it over to Nate and he'll cover the last 5 topics. All right, so first off, we need to figure out what the golf course is and defining the areas of the course. So basically, the purpose of this rule is we have to know exactly what the area of the course is. That means where our ball is at and what we can do. So looking at this picture, we've got the general area, which is everything that is outside of a specific area. So the 4 specific areas that we have are going to be the teeing area, bunkers, penalty areas, and then the putting green. And so if you're somewhere in the course, such as in the fairway or in the rough, you would be defined as in the general area. So why is it important to know? Well, it's important to know which area of the course our ball lies because of the status of any interfering objects or conditions. And also, depending on which area of the golf course your ball is in, you have different options for either playing the ball or taking relief. So what is the golf course? The entire area of play within the edge of any boundaries set by the committee is going to be in bounds and a part of the golf course. So looking at this picture on our right, we can see a white dotted line that goes all the way around. That is the entirety of the course that we are playing. Obviously, we've got specific areas within it, but everything inside of that dashed area is going to be on site on the course and everything outside of that dash line is going to be considered out of bounds and not a part of the course. So as I just touched on, the general area, it's called the general area because it covers most of the golf course, and that's where you will most likely be playing from every time you are hitting a shot. This can include every type of ground and growing or attached objects, such as your fairway or your rough or trees. The general area can also include all teeing locations on the course other than the teeing area of the hole you're playing, as well as all wrong greens. So looking at these pictures, the top one, we've got a yellow box. That's going to be the teeing area because that is where we are starting the hole that we are playing. Now, the blue boxes, which is ahead of where the player's teeing off from, because that's not the teeing area of that hole, it's going to be treated as the general area. And then if we look at the picture below that, we've got 3 red lines going to wrong greens, which is not the green of the hole that we are currently playing. So that's going to be treated as the general area versus the green with the yellow arrow. That's the hole we're playing. So for that specific hole, we are referring to that as our putting green, for which different rules apply. All right, so the 4 specific areas, like I said, certain rules apply for different areas of the course when they're not in the general area. And those areas, once again, are going to be the teeing area, bunkers, penalty area, and then putting greens. So what do we do if our ball appears to be in 2 spots on the course? Well, determining which area of the course where the ball lies is important because, like I said, we've got different rules that we need to follow depending on the area. So using this picture, we can see that our golf ball is touching the yellow penalty area line. So because a golf ball can only lie in one spot, we have to figure out which area is more significant for our ball to be lying in. So the general rule of thumb is that if a golf ball is touching any part of a penalty area line, it is going to be treated as being in the penalty area. So for this picture, with the ball touching both the penalty area line and the general area, we're going to treat this ball as though it is in the penalty area. Now, what happens if our golf ball is in 2 specific parts of the golf course? We're going to look at the hierarchy. So penalty areas will always rank the highest, followed by bunker and then putting green. So it's kind of hard to see on this picture, but we've got our golf ball right on the line of the penalty area and the bunker. Because penalty area trumps bunker, we are going to treat this ball as being in the penalty area, which is great because we can ground our club in a penalty area, whereas in a bunker, we're not able to do that. All right. Next, we're going to look at the teeing area. This is where we start every hole that we play. So in order to begin a hole, a ball must be played from inside of the teeing area. What is the teeing area? Well, it's a 2 club length rectangle measured by using the longest club in your bag. Chad, if you want to go to the next slide. Perfect. So it's a rectangle. The way that we measure that is, like I said, with the longest club in the bag. If your longest club is a putter, then you will need to use the second longest club in the bag. For most players, that's going to be your driver, or if you don't carry a driver, it's going to be your 3-wood. And we start by measuring it from the forwardmost point of the tee marker and the outermost edge of the tee marker, and then we can lay our club down twice and determine that area, and we can tee the ball up anywhere within that area, and we are all set. This is one of my favorite things to talk about in golf. A ball is not in play until a stroke is made. So if a teed ball falls off the tee before a player makes a stroke at it, the ball can be re-teed anywhere within the teeing area without penalty. So for anybody out there who plays with buddies, and if they accidentally knock the ball off the tee and your buddy says that's one, they're incorrect. You can re-tee, you can put the ball back up on the tee where it was at, or if you decide you want to move the tee a couple of inches, you can do that as well. But There's no penalty to you if the ball accidentally falls off before you make a stroke. All right, now Rule 18, stroke and distance relief, ball lost or out of bounds or provisional ball. So Rule 18 covers taking relief under penalty strokes and under penalty of stroke and distance. So a ball is lost if it's lost outside of a penalty area or comes to rest out of bounds. What this means is the required progression of playing from the teeing area to the hole is broken, and a player has to resume the progression by playing again from where the previous stroke was made. We'll also talk about how and when a provisional ball may be played and how we need to go about that. So when is a ball lost? A ball is lost if it's not found in 3 minutes after either a player or their caddy begins to search for it. You guys are all in high school, so you probably have a couple of spectators out following along, mom or dad, or maybe even your coach is up ahead of you looking to where you're teeing off from. They are able to start searching for your golf ball before you arrive. But once you are within the general area of where your ball is believed to have come to rest, that's when your 3 minutes start. All right, and so when the ball is going to be lost or out of bounds, a ball is going to be inbounds if any part of the ball lies on or touches the ground or anything else inside of that boundary edge. So if we remember back to one of the first slides with that white dashed line, that's going to be our boundary edge for the golf course. And so as long as any part of your golf ball is on the course side of that, you will be able to play it. So using the picture on the left, we've got 2 golf balls that are left of the out of bounds stakes. So because the entire ball is out of bounds, that ball has come to rest out of bounds. Now the 2 golf balls with one being on the line, because any part of that golf ball, even just one dimple, is on the course side of out of bounds, you are able to play that and the ball is treated as in bounds. And then using the picture on the right side, instead of having stakes, since we have a line, we're going to use that same method. So the 2 golf balls with the red X's, because the entirety of the ball is on the white line or left of that white line, we're going to have to treat that as being out of bounds. You are no longer able to play that golf ball. Now the golf ball's on the right, because half of the golf ball is on the course side of that white out of bounds line. We are able to play it and the ball is being treated as in bounds in play. And out of bounds, the lines extend up. So the boundary edge, as we can see here, it's going to extend all the way up into those trees. So where that golf ball is at, just right of where it says in bounds in yellow, even though we can't necessarily reach that ball, it's still in bounds because our boundary line extends all the way up. So if we wanted to climb the tree and attempt to play that golf ball, you are able to do so. All right, so if a golf ball is inbounds, you can certainly stand out of bounds to play a shot. Now, with this example right here with this gentleman, his feet are going to be out of bounds compared to where the ball is at, but he is able to do that. What he cannot do is he cannot remove that out of bounds stake in order to take a stance more comfortable. He must leave that boundary object in place, but he can certainly have his feet out of bounds. He can have his grip out of bounds, but his golf ball, because it's in bounds, he's okay to do that. He just can't remove that boundary stake to make a better stance. Okay, so what happens if a ball is lost or out of bounds? The player must take stroke and distance relief. So that means they will add 1 penalty stroke and they will play either the original ball or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. So this can happen on a couple different areas of the golf course. The first and probably most common area is going to be the teeing area. So if you hit your first ball and it goes out of bounds, you can re-tee. You don't have to drop the ball. You can tee it up once again to replay the stroke. Or if it's in the general area or a bunker or from a penalty area even, you go back to where you previously played and then you drop the ball as close to that original spot as possible. And as long as that ball stays within a 1 club length relief area, you are free to play from there again. And then not as common, but if you are on the putting green and your ball were to go out of bounds, you would basically replace it where you hit your previous putt from, add 1 penalty to your score, and then play from there until it is holed out. All right, now we're going to look at provisional ball and why it's important to play a provisional if you can. All right, so first thing is understanding what a provisional ball is. So provisional ball is another ball played in case the ball just played by the player is either out of bounds or lost outside of a penalty area. It's important to know that a provisional ball is not the player's ball in play until it becomes the ball in play under Rule 18.3, which we'll get into in these next couple of slides. All right, so first step is figuring out how we play our provisional ball. So before your next stroke is made, a player must announce that they're going to play a provisional ball. So we can see here this player believes that their ball has come to rest either out of bounds or has been lost outside of a penalty area. So they're going to say, I'm playing a provisional ball, and then they are dropping that provisional ball near where they previously played within that 1 club length relief area. A provisional ball must be abandoned when the ball has not yet become the ball in play. And so we'll look at 2 cases where we have to do that. So the first one is when the original ball is found on the golf course outside of a penalty area before the end of the 3-minute search. So using this diagram, we see that our original ball is on the left side, either in a tree or in some bushes, but we have located it and we know that it is within the boundaries of the golf course. And we can see our provisional is in the middle of the fairway. That provisional ball can no longer be played since we know where our original ball is at. So we would need to abandon that provisional ball and then proceed with our original. All right, and then the second time would be if the original ball is found in a penalty area. And if that's the case, a player can either play it as it lies or they can take penalty relief under Rule 17.1, which we'll get into in a couple more slides. Now, if we can't find our golf ball, but it is known or virtually certain to be in a penalty area, we must either take penalty area relief, such as lateral relief or back of the line relief, or we can go back to where we previously played. What we cannot do is if we are virtually certain our ball came to rest in a penalty area, we cannot play our provisional ball because we have knowledge or virtual certainty that our ball is in the penalty area, not lost in the general area. So now that we've found our original ball, what do we do with our provisional ball? Well, the first thing is all strokes with that provisional ball before it was abandoned do not count. So if you were to hit your tee ball with a driver and you think it might be out of bounds and you announce to your group, I'm going to play a provisional ball. The first ball was a Titleist 1, the second one is going to be a Titleist 3, and you decide to hit an iron off the tee just to keep it in play, and you arrive to your provisional ball and it's roughly 100 yards further away from where you believe your original ball to be, you can hit that second shot with that provisional ball because it is not closer to the hole than your original ball. So if it takes you 5 strokes to get to where you believe your original ball is at, and you're able to locate the original ball and it's within the boundaries of the course and you are able to play it, great. Those 5 strokes that you took at your provisional ball, they do not count towards your score. It's as though those strokes never happened. All right, next up, we're going to look at the third area of the golf course, which is penalty areas. So for this, we'll look at marking your ball, lifting, cleaning, replacing it on the spot. And the first one we're going to look at is the drop. So it seems pretty self-explanatory, but the rules of golf outline exactly what a drop is. It means to hold the ball and let go of it so that it falls through the air with the intent for the ball to be in play. If a player lets go of a ball without intending for it to be in play, the ball has not been dropped and therefore is not in play. So if you are trying to figure out where exactly you want to drop the ball within your relief area and you accidentally let go of it, that's fine. You just pick it up, pick out your spot where you want to drop, and then once you drop it with the intent of it being in play, as long as it comes to rest within that relief area, that ball is now in play. It's important to note with drops that each rule identifies a specific relief area where the ball must be dropped, but also where it must come to rest. So the relief area is the area where a player must drop a ball when taking relief under a rule. As we can see with this picture right here, we've got our circle in the middle, that's our reference point, and then we've got 1 club length on either side, creating a half circle, and that's going to be our entire relief area. We can drop a ball anywhere in there. The only time we don't need to use it to actually put a club down and put tees in the ground to create our relief area is when we're doing back of the line relief. The relief area for this option is actually created once we have dropped the ball and it lands on the line, keeping the point where our previous stroke entered into the penalty area in line with the flag. All right, so like I mentioned earlier, each relief rule requires players to use a specific relief area whose size and location are going to be based on the following 3 factors: your reference point, the size of the relief area measured from the reference point, and then the limits on location of your relief area. So using back on the line relief, the player must drop on the line in a location allowed by the rules being used. And the spot where the ball first touches the ground when dropped is going to create the relief area that is 1 club length in any direction at that point. So we don't actually need to put any tees in the ground and measure it out. Just as long as we drop that ball on that line, that ball can roll any direction up to 1 club length. So even if the ball rolls forward a little bit, that's okay. And then for the purposes of creating a relief area, it's good to understand what exactly we mean by club length. So to measure your club length, it's going to be the length of the entire club used, starting at the toe of the club and ending with the butt end of the grip. Something else just to keep in mind is that if your longest club in your bag is your putter, you are unable to use your putter when you're using your clubs to measure out your relief area. And also, it's a good rule of thumb to always take the head covers off of your clubs if you're using your driver to measure out a club length for your relief area. Just make sure to take that head cover off. You don't want to create a relief area that's too big. All right, penalty areas. So Rule 17 is a specific rule for penalty areas, which are defined as bodies of water or other areas defined by the committee where a ball is often lost or unable to be played. For 1 penalty stroke, players can players may use specific relief options to play a ball from outside of the penalty area. So the two penalty areas are going to be defined with either red or yellow. Depending on if a penalty area is red or yellow is going to impact the player's relief options. And just like with out of bounds, a player may stand in a penalty area to play a ball outside of the penalty area. So with this picture, we see that that player's golf ball is in the general area and he or she is standing inside of the penalty area to play that shot. You are able to do so. Right, so when a ball is in a penalty area, what this means is that any part of the golf ball either lies on or touches the ground or anything else inside the edge of the penalty area. So looking at this picture here, we see that it's a yellow line and the golf ball is on the penalty area side of that yellow line. So even though the golf ball isn't in the pond or lake, we can still see that it's not on the course side of that line. So therefore, it's going to be in the penalty area. We can try to play it as it lies, or we can go through and take one of our relief options for penalty areas. So yeah, once again, if your ball is in the penalty area, you can certainly play it as it lies, but one of the more common things that we'll see is players taking one of their other relief options. So with this diagram, we see three different options for a player. It looks like this player hit their ball into the red penalty area off the tee. So in the bottom right corner, our first option is going to be penalty of stroke and distance, which means you're going back to where you previously played and playing from there once again. The second option, which is kind of in the middle of your screen on the left, is back of the line relief, which is where you take the point where the ball last crossed into the penalty area and keep that in line with the flagstick, and you can go as far back as you would like. And once again, with this relief option, we don't actually have to measure out our club length. What we do is as long as we drop the ball on that point, keeping those the point of entry as well as the flagstick in line, once we drop our ball, then we have our relief area created. And then the third option, which is the most common, is where we take the point where the ball last crossed, and then we measure our 2 club lengths from there to create that half circle relief area. And then actually our next slide, will walk you through a video with back of the line relief.
The rules of golf are changing in 2023. The back on the line relief procedure has been simplified, and here's what it looks like. So to use a penalty area as an example, I'm going to keep the point where the ball last crossed between the hole and where I want to drop it. I can go back as far as I want on the line, but I have to drop it on the line because that's what activates this relief option. If I don't drop it on the line, I'll be dropping in a wrong way. The relief area won't get created, and I'll have to correct my mistake by dropping it again, but in the right way on the line. But once dropped on the line, the ball can roll up to 1 club length in any direction, even if it rolls forward and closer to the hole. Back on the line is a great relief option for penalty areas, but you can also use it when you decide that your ball is unplayable. The rules of golf are...
And then that third option for penalty area relief, which is called lateral relief, this is only going to be available for a red penalty area. We're unable to do this with the yellow penalty areas. So fortunately, red penalty areas tend to be how most golf courses are starting to mark ponds and things like that. So once again, if it's a red penalty area and your ball comes to rest in it, what you would do is you would take the point of reference where it last crossed the penalty area, measure your 2 club lengths, and then drop anywhere within those 2 club lengths. And then this last bullet point is really important. So if your two club lengths, when you measure it out, include two different areas of the golf course, your golf ball needs to come to rest at the area of the course where it first comes to contact after you drop it. So if just left of our relief area was a bunker, if we were to drop it in the general area and then it rolls and comes to rest in a bunker, we need to re-drop that because our ball first came into contact with the general area and then came to rest in a bunker, which is a separate area of the course. So you just need to make sure that if we're dropping it next to two different areas of the course, that our ball is coming to rest in the same area of the course where it first makes contact. And then the penalty for playing a ball from a wrong place is going to be the general penalty, which is 2 strokes. So just keep that in mind when you're taking penalty area relief, that you're taking it and playing from the right place because we don't want anyone getting penalized. And then I will pass it off to Nate to start with bunkers.
All right. Well, thanks, Carly. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me, Carly?
Yeah.
Okay,
You're good.
perfect. All right. So, yeah, we're going to jump into bunkers and then we'll cover a few other things, such as putting greens and playing 2 balls and stuff like that towards the end. So, we'll go to the next slide here. All right. So, basically, when we're playing around, and you happen to have a ball that ends up, what you believe is in the bunker or in the sand, we basically have to determine if it is in the bunker, in fact, in the bunker. So how do we do that? Basically, if a ball or any part of the ball is touching sand on the ground inside the edge of the bunker, or is inside the edge of the bunker and rests on the ground where sand normally would be, that's going to be in the bunker. Sometimes, though, you might have situations where your ball might end up being on a loose impediment, for example, such as leaves or twigs. Obviously that's a real common thing in Iowa, definitely in the fall. We have movable obstructions. So like this rake in this image here on the right would be a great example of a movable obstruction. Obviously, you're not going to be you're not going to have to play off that, but there are such situations that you might rest up against it, and the rules do allow you to then mark that spot, remove that rake, and then drop. Or sorry, is it a place, Chad, or a drop? Or place it, right?
Yeah, you would replace it in that scenario.
Sorry, Chad. I think your volume is off, but never mind. I go. Sorry,
Yeah.
there's some other things as well. Sorry, the last slide kind of went forward a little quicker, but that's okay.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself so I could answer your question, and I think
Oh, sorry. No, it's okay. I couldn't hear you. Sorry, Chad. But there's also going to be times your ball could be on a normal course condition, such as temporary water or maybe an animal hole or something like that. So that's also another situation where abnormal course condition, there's going to be situations where you can take relief for those. Same with integral objects. You might have situations where, you might have, maybe wood planking going through the bunker or something like that. And that's depending on what the committee determines. And we'll talk a little bit about integral objects a little later, but depending on what the committee determines these objects to be, then, you might not get relief for that in that situation. But we'll hit some of that a little bit later. So before playing a ball in the bunker, you are now allowed, and this changed in 2020, I believe, or 2019 when the rules were really overhauled. But for those of us that have played, for a long time, this was not really something that was allowed. But we are now allowed as players to remove loose impediments and movable obstructions under the rules. And this is going to include any reasonable touching or movement of the sand of the bunker that happens while doing so. So that's, why we're doing it. We're trying to, obviously, to remove, we're trying to remove these objects in the least intrusive way possible. But if you do happen to move a little bit of sand while doing so, that's going to be okay under the rules. So there are going to be times where obviously touching sand, and this has not changed, is going to result in a penalty. Before making a stroke at a ball in a bunker, a player must not deliberately touch sand in the bunker with a hand, club, rake, or another object to test the condition of the sand to learn information for the next stroke. And so that's the big point there. It's like having the intent to test the condition to determine, kind of how, what that condition is going to be for your next stroke you're going to be playing. Now, I think a lot of you guys will maybe be surprised that some of the things you actually are allowed to do in the bunker that are not going to result in a penalty. Obviously you're allowed to dig in with your feet to take a stance for a practice swing or a stroke. So that's still allowed. You are allowed to smooth the bunker to care for the golf course. So that's something that a lot of people maybe weren't aware of. Something that always surprised me was that you can actually bring your golf clubs or other equipment into the bunker. You can set these down or even throw them down in the bunker. Obviously, again, you need to be doing this in a way that you're not, having the intent of testing the sand, but that is allowed. When you are measuring, let's say you're taking an unplayable ball relief option in the bunker, you can take out your driver, for example, and rest it on the sand and measure, mark, lift, replace the ball. Any of those things you're allowed to do and touch the sand in those cases. So you don't necessarily have to hover your club over the sand because you're afraid to touch it. At times you might be going into a real steep bunker and you might use the golf club as a cane or something to balance yourself to prevent a fall. So that's going to be okay. And you're also allowed to strike the sand in frustration or anger. Obviously this could get into other situations where maybe you're not following your code of conduct policy if there is one. So obviously we don't encourage striking sand in anger, but that is under the rules allowed. So penalty for breach of any of those things. So it's, penalty for breach of, let's say you're testing the sand, with your hand or club, that's going to be a general penalty of 2 strokes. So just be aware of those. All right. So now we're going to move on to rule 16. We're going to cover 2 parts of that, which is going to be abnormal course conditions and covering a little bit about movable obstructions and then an embedded ball. So we're going to cover free relief. So any of these situations for abnormal course conditions are going to allow you free relief from any interference you have from animal holes, ground under repair, removable obstructions, or temporary water. So of the pictures below, I mean, those are very common things that we do come across throughout our rounds of golf, as we play. So just know that all of these do allow us to take free relief. And as this says, these are what we call now abnormal course conditions. They do have separate definitions as it says. So if you are interested in learning more, I do recommend going into the rules of golf. There's an app now. So you might remember getting a small book each year. The USGA has actually transferred kind of transferred all that into now an app. So I do recommend going and checking out the app. The definitions are actually a really great place to start when you want to learn the rules. So this specific rule, Rule 16, abnormal course conditions, is not going to give you relief for movable obstructions or boundary objects or integral objects. These are going to be treated a little bit differently, and they're covered in other rules. Example in this picture on the left, you're up against a trash can. You're going to be able to obviously move that because it is movable. It's easily moved. The boundary fence, maybe Carly kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, but that's not going to be something that you can take free relief, or I guess I should say, you can take unplayable relief to get away from it if you need to. And then thirdly, this picture here, let's say your ball is outside the penalty area, but you do have interference. For example, maybe you're, standing on the retaining wall. In that case, the committee may be determined that that retaining wall is an integral object, and so you're not going to be able to take relief for it. Other good situations, or if you're wondering what an integral object is, I mean, a great example of this would be like the road hole at St. Andrews, right of hole 17. They have a road there that normally in America we would treat that as an obstruction. Over there, they kind of have defined that as part of the challenge of playing the golf course. And so in that situation, you'd be expected to play off of it, or you would need to take a relief under unplayable ball, which would be a stroke penalty there. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what an integral object is, because it is something that can come up once in a while. All right, so when we're taking abnormal course condition relief, you've probably heard this term before, but it's called finding your nearest point of complete relief. This is actually a definition here, but basically by finding your nearest point of complete relief, it's going to be the estimated point where the ball would lie that is nearest to the ball's original spot, but not nearer the hole than that original spot. So, depending on if you're a right-handed or left-handed player here, if you're a left-handed player, you're probably going to be on the right side of the path here. As a right-handed player, because you have to take full complete relief by meaning your stance and area, your lie of your ball and your area of intended swing is not being impeded by that condition any longer. That's why the player is on the left, because he had to take complete relief on this cart path in this example. So that's something that is worth looking into a little bit more, because it can affect you, as this next picture will show you. Oh, sorry, it might be another slide down, but actually, if you want to go back, yeah, there we go. So how do you estimate this reference point? Like, how do you start? Basically, you need to identify the choice of club. So basically, what I like to do as a rules official is I like to figure out, ask the player, okay, how far do you have, and what club would you use normally to hit this shot? They would take whatever club out that they would be using to hit that shot. I'd ask them to take their stance and make sure that their swing and line of play would, maybe not line of play as much, but their swing would be no longer impeded by that condition, such as the cart path, for example. They don't necessarily need to simulate that stroke, but they don't actually even need to take the stance. But I tend to make them do that, because I think it's just good practice to show them, like, this is how you're going to get complete relief. And once you do that, you're not really going to have that situation where the player's going to need to redrop again because they didn't fully go through this process. So this is the picture I was kind of alluding to. In this case, because this player, is a right-handed player, he's and actually, just because of where the ball rests, it's going to end up being a situation where this player is actually going to be taking his nearest point of complete relief, actually in a kind of maybe even a worse spot, where he's got interference by now the tree and the mulch underneath. So, just be aware as coaches and as players that, when you're taking relief, you might be dropping potentially in a position where you might have interference by something else. And so, just be careful when when you pick up your golf ball to take relief, just be sure that kind of what your options are and where you're going to be dropping. So, if you need to take a little extra time there to make sure, definitely take it, because it can affect you and as it could in this situation here. So we kind of talked about this already, but like, how do you know when you have interference from an abnormal course condition? And you know, you don't have to have both of these to be true. Really just one of them. And that's basically if your ball touches or is in or on an abnormal course condition. So pretty basic. If you have any type of interference at all, you're going to be able to take free relief. Also, if you have interference from your stance or intended swing, so that's kind of the main points. That he kind of hits about everything there. The only thing that it doesn't, as the next click will show, is when you have special cases that are only going to be when the ball is on the putting green and you have line of play interference. So line of play is not something that really comes up when you're actually playing you know, say you're in the general area or you're in the bunker or something like that. Line of play is really only really used when your ball is on the putting green and you have interference from, say, temporary water or an obstruction such as this. In that case, because your ball is already on the putting green, you're actually going to be allowed to take relief by placing the ball either left or right or wherever that nearest point is, where you no longer have line of play interference. So it's a little different than when you're not on the putting green, but there is some special cases that this could arise. I know Cedar Rapids Country Club, for example, has some sprinkler heads, I believe, that are possibly on the green. I can't remember. It's been a while, but it's a situation that could arise. So, but even if it's not sprinkler heads, it could be temporary water. It could be, you know, ice or snow, situations like that. So just be aware that is available for you to take free relief. So if the abnormal course condition, such as this sprinkler head, is you know, close enough to distract the player, but does not meet any of the requirements for interference, basically that player is not going to be able to take free relief because distraction alone is not enough to grant that. So now, if that player was standing on that, if the player's area of intended swing was maybe going to be impeded by it, or something else, you know, then that player would be warranted to take relief in that situation. And also, a player is not going to be allowed to take relief for situations where you have interference from an abnormal course condition or obstruction, for example, if you're inside the penalty area. So in this case, because she's inside the penalty area, even though she has interference here from this bridge and this railing, she wouldn't be able to take relief, or at least free relief. She can, though, proceed under penalty area relief and take relief under a penalty of 1 stroke. The player is also able to take free relief by dropping the original ball or another ball. So this was a change in 2019. You used to have to use the ball that you were playing kind of all the way around, but anytime you are taking relief, free relief, any free relief situation now under the rules, you actually are able to substitute another ball. So if your ball's pretty, you know, let's just say you feel like it's bad luck at this point, you know, definitely under the rules, if you're taking free relief, you can substitute it out. The one thing is you can't do is when you're marking your ball on the green, you aren't able in that case to substitute another ball. It's basically got to be a situation where you're taking free relief somewhere on the golf course. I hope that kind of clears that up. So what's our kind of relief area look like? This is just as you probably already understand how this works, but in this case, you know, the player has, in this case, a ball that's in the middle of ground under repair. His nearest point of complete relief happens to be directly behind the ground under repair. What I would do as a rules official is I would have that player then mark that spot with a T where the reference point is, and then you would allow them then to say take their driver out at that point and have a big one club length relief area that they could drop that ball in. So that's just kind of how I would do it as an official, and you know, just making sure that they know how big that area is that they can drop a ball in. All right, so how do you take free relief in the bunker when you have interference from let's say temporary water in this case? So if you want to have free relief and not have any additional penalty strokes, you would take your free or nearest point of complete relief as normal and drop somewhere in the bunker. I believe if you wanted to get out of the bunker, in that case, you would then have a penalty stroke that you would add to it, but it would be a similar situation where you're as back on the line relief would show. And there's actually a good graph. It's not on this slideshow, but there's a good graph in the book that's going to show you how you can take relief from a bunker, potentially even unplayable ball relief. Would give you some options as well. So kind of know your options in a bunker. There's quite a few options that are available to you that aren't seen elsewhere. Embedded ball. So, we probably haven't had this come up too much lately, just because or in the last few years we've kind of been in a drought. But there obviously are situations where you might have a heavy rain or an area that the golf course that just really doesn't dry out very well. And so we're gonna basically cover the two parts of embedded ball relief, where point number one is basically determining or if your ball's embedded or not, and then or sorry, if your ball must be embedded in the general area. So sorry, I'm kind of getting a little confused here, but basically, yeah, the first part is that, and this doesn't happen a lot in Iowa, but there are going to be times where your ball could be embedded, but because it's in sand, in a sandy soil, that you won't actually get relief for it. So your ball to get penalty area, or sorry, to get embedded ball relief in the general area, your ball basically has to be anywhere in the general area, and obviously in Iowa we're not having situations where you have sandy scrub like we do maybe like in Pinehurst or somewhere like that, but basically yeah, sorry, thanks for moving that on, Carly. So how do you know if your ball's embedded? Basically, if it's in its own pitch mark made as a result of the player's previous stroke, and part of the ball is below the level of the ground, that ball is going to be considered embedded. Doesn't necessarily have to break. It has to break the plane, but it doesn't necessarily have to break into dirt. So as you can see, that middle picture, that ball broke the plane of the ground level, but there is still a little, I don't know if you can see it, a little bit of grass between the ball and the dirt. In that case, that ball's still considered embedded just because it had broken the plane. So be aware, though, that it does need to be, under the rules, the ball does need to become airborne. So it can't be something that's been driven into the ground further, where it doesn't, say you're in fescue and you just drive it deeper into the ground. In that case, the rules actually don't permit you to take relief for an embedded ball. So just know the ball has to get airborne, and it has to be on its from its own pitch mark to be eligible to take embedded ball relief. And the relief area is pretty simple for this one. Basically, we're looking at a reference point, sorry, that's right behind the ball, and that's where you would basically put your tee. Again, it's going to look really similar to a normal course condition, but you're going to get a club length from there and drop. So pretty simple there. All right, we'll move on to putting greens. And yeah, we can probably we're going to cover 4 points of this, starting with things that are allowed now. And again, this is for those of us that have played for a while. These are changes that have obviously were big changes for us. I mean, if you're coming up and learning the game within the last few years, this is kind of how I'm sure you didn't even know how things were previous, but previously we weren't able to fix really anything besides your own pitch mark. But now a player is going to be able to repair damage on the putting green without penalty, and that's going to be taking any reasonable actions to restore the putting green as nearly as possible to its original condition. So the things you can do is you obviously can remove sand and loose soil. You can repair old ball marks, scuffs. There's gonna be times you'll have shoe damage or damage from the flag stick potentially, animal tracks. let's see, I think there's potentially you might have acorns or sticks that have maybe been embedded just by maybe maintenance equipment running over them. So those are situations where you can actually take um, uh, take those items or those things out of the ground and restore the condition as nearly as possible to its original condition. Now, what's going to happen if your ball or ball marker happens to move on the putting green? And we're going to cover basically if you accidentally cause it to move and what to do when say natural forces move your ball. So we'll go cover those. But basically, there's not going to be a penalty anymore if you cause your ball to move. So this could be when you're addressing the ball, for example, if you happen to tap it. If there's no intent to hit the ball and stroke it, you're going to be allowed to replace that ball. Let's say you're marking your ball and your bottom part of your putter's wet, and you tap down your coin, which a lot of us do. Let's say that extra moisture is enough to like lift that coin up, and it falls and it goes 3 feet away. There's no obviously penalty anymore. So you can under the rules replace that ball or ball marker. If you know the spot, obviously replace it there. But if you do not know, you are allowed under the rules to estimate that spot and play on. So no penalty, as your intent was not to do that. And again, I kind of just covered that. But so natural forces. So obviously, the last few days have been really windy. If the greens were fast, like they are in mid-season play, we might have a lot of situations where balls could be moving on the green. Now, if natural forces, so we call wind under the rules, under definitions, natural forces. If those natural forces do cause our ball to move, where the player must play from next depends on whether the ball had already been lifted and replaced on the putting green. So if the ball has already been lifted and replaced, so um, you're going to end up just replacing that ball where it was. If the ball has not already been lifted and replaced, you're just going to play from that new spot. So you can think of a hole where you have a really severe false front, for example. Let's say you're hitting you're 100 yards out and you hit your shot on that false front, and as you're walking up, that ball blows away and blows down the hill towards the fairway. In that case, because you hadn't marked that ball at that point, you just have to play that ball from that spot. But if you happen to run up there and mark it before it moves, let's say you replace that ball at that point and the wind blows it, you're going to be allowed to replace that ball. So it's kind of it's been a nice change. We've had certain tournaments where we get a lot of wind and the greens are pretty fast, and so you often see players running up and trying to mark their ball as quickly as possible to avoid the ball moving further away from the hole than where it started. All right, and then I'm going to cover kind of this last part, which is going to be found under Rule 20. It's going to be the playing two balls when uncertain what to do situations. So this is something that we encourage all the time. Even in tournaments where we have 6 to 8 rules officials, there's still situations where players might get into situations where a rules official still is not easily you can't easily get their attention, or you just don't know what the ruling is. To avoid being out there waiting all day for someone to come out and see what the situation is or what the ruling is, as players, you guys do have the ability to play two balls. Basically, you have to follow a proper procedure, and it's really a must in all these situations. And failure to do any of these is going to really result in a disqualification penalty. So it's really important if you are going to play two balls to follow this procedure. But basically, you must announce your intention to play two balls and declare which one you want to score with before actually playing either ball. Actually, if you do happen to play a ball and then decide after you hit that shot that you didn't like it and you want to play a second ball. In that case, because you already played the first one without declaring your intention beforehand, you can still play that second ball. It won't count, but you're not going to be, you're going to end up having to score with the first ball. So now when you get done, you do need to report the facts of the situation to the committee before returning your scorecard. And that's really one of the more important parts about this. And that's, again, if you failure to do any of those, it's going to result in a disqualification penalty. So if you do have any questions on this, we could probably direct you to, more of a detailed step-by-step process so you can make sure that your players really know exactly how to do this. All right. So that's really it. I appreciate you guys jumping on here today. I'm actually not feeling too great, so I'm glad my voice kind of held up this long. But yeah, you got our numbers here and you got our emails. We'd be happy to talk with you guys if you had any specific questions. One thing that's really important this time of year is course marking and preparation for, say, your upcoming tournaments. A lot of times golf courses aren't going to have paint down yet. Potentially they might not even have stakes put out. And I always like to say, you don't play basketball, you don't play football without having a defined field or court. You always know where the 3-point line is, basically, is what I like to say. And so if if your golf course isn't well defined right now, this is a great time to kind of talk with your superintendent at the course, talk with the pro, make sure that when you go into your competition season that all those things are kind of well defined, because it's going to really make your job as a coach and as a committee member, if you have a big tournament, for example, a lot easier. And so we'd be happy to look at it with you on Google Earth or any of that. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us. Carly's in charge of a lot of our championships. So if you want to have players that want to get into any events, we'd love to help get them in and make it a fun summer for them. But thank you for your time today and putting up with the rules and putting up with us. Carly, is there anything you want to add?
Questions, feel free to unmute and ask them now, or feel free to send them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hey, Carly, I don't think I can hear you talking, but I don't think your audio is working. So, and I guess if there is any questions, if anybody wants to say anything real quick, we can take those. If not, we'll probably jump off and leave the meeting. All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll have a great season and look forward to seeing you out there.